For those of you who don't know me, I'm Mike Russell. I'm past president. I was president. I had the honor of being president from 24 to 2016. And today it's my pleasure to introduce Brian Brogen. He's our first presenter, and he's going to be sharing insights on culture over compliance. Brian is a certified human expert, coach, and speaker. He has a unique emphasis on team dynamics and communication. He's also the founder of Voices for Leadership, and he's the best-selling author of the 100-Hour Pilot. So please join me and welcome Brian Brogen to the stage.
Thank you. Well, good morning. It is so great to be here with you this morning. I am a former user of scaffolding as a mechanical contractor. So I'm at home. I'm with people that I recognize, brands I recognize, and I'm excited to be here today. Before I get started, I did want to thank the SAIA specifically. I want to thank Christina and Jackie who allowed me to give a proposal to be here with you and accepted that. And we've been having a lot of conversation about the event. I've met a lot of amazing people while I've been here. They have done a wonderful job of planning this event. And also for the sponsors, you can't do these things without sponsors. I'm on a board for a regional council, and it's very important that you have your sponsors. So give the sponsors and SAIA a round of applause. So I'm curious, I'd like to get to know the audience a little better. Do we have any engineers in the room? If you're an engineer, raise your hand. Got a few engineers? All right, how about project managers? We have some project managers in the room? No project managers in this room? All right, well, I'm going to tell you a story here. And this is about a man. He's flying a hot air balloon, and he realizes that he's lost. He reduces height and spots a man down below. He lowers the balloon and further shouts, "Excuse me, can you help me? I promised a friend I would meet him here half an hour ago, but I don't know where I am." The man below says, "Yes, you're in a hot air balloon hovering approximately 30 feet above this field. You're between 40 and 42 degrees north latitude and between 58 and 60 degrees west longitude." To which the balloonist says, "You must be an engineer." "I am," replies the man. "How did you know?" "Well," says the balloonist, "everything you told me was technically correct, but I have no idea of what to make of your information, and the fact is I'm still lost." The man below says, "You must be a project manager." "I am," says the balloonist. "How did you know?" "Well, you don't know where you are or where you're going. You made a promise which you have no idea how to keep. You expect me to solve your problem. The fact is you're in the same position you were before we met, but now somehow it's my fault." You ever feel like that sometimes between engineers and project managers? All right, so a little bit about myself. I started in the construction industry at 17 years old. I graduated high school at 17, not because I was an exemplary student, but because I started school at 4 years old. I barely graduated high school, and I fell into a career that I absolutely love in construction. I spent 28 years as a contractor, and in the last 3 years, I decided to go out in my own business doing coaching and training, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But in those early years, I was looking forward to turning 18 so I could go out into the shop and work with men. And out there in that shop, these men were out there, these gusto-type folks back then, 30 years ago. And I was looking forward to being part of that. One day, I was driving the big F550 flatbed delivery truck. I pulled it into the end of the bay shop, and I stepped out on that fuel tank step that they have, and I reached out to move the overhead crane that was kind of in my way. And as I moved the overhead crane, got it out of my way, I stepped down off the steps, and I met the block and the bolt that holds the shivs together right to my forehead as that block pendulum swung and almost knocked me out. And so what do we do when we do something dumb like that? I didn't pass out, thankfully, but I did go, "Who saw that?" I don't know of anybody that saw it that day, so I think I got away with that one. Fast forward a few years, and I moved out into the field for our construction company, and I am working about 200 feet in the air at a power plant. were using grading. Then I had to make some repairs to the steel that was under the grading. So I saw the iron workers above me at that time. Now remember, this is like 1996. They were using their lanyards to drag the grading across the steel. No, right? But at that time, we weren't as educated as we are now. I hooked my lanyards to a piece of 2-inch, very thick, heavy grading, and I wasn't the counterweight that I am today. And I snatched that grading off the steel to move it so I could do some repairs below it, and the grading nosedived into the hole with me tied to it. I laid on my side, and I thought, what am I gonna do? And it's pulling me in. I scream for help. A couple guys come rushing over to help me, and we hoist the grading back up, set on thing, and the guys saved my life. Fast forward, I have twin boys that are about to turn 26 years old. Both of them decided to follow me in construction boots, which I was very excited about. But my son shows up at a job site at a mine in Florida, and he meets this gentleman, and he says, Brogen, you any kin to Brian Brogen? Well, yeah, that's my dad. And he says, I saved your dad's life. True story. That was the guy that helped me pull that grading back up, and he did save my life. So that is a little bit. And back in those days, man, we took a lot of risk. We kind of wanted to be cowboys. Like, we wanted to take those risks, but we've come to learn and do better. And that's what I want to talk to you about today, is about not taking risk and those things. So we're going to talk about culture versus compliance. And the title of my speech and presentation is Culture Over Compliance. I am not suggesting to you that you don't need to be compliant. We live in a compliant world. We have statutes, regulations, standards, specifications. All of those things are important. But what if we made it very clear the why behind those statutes and those rules and regulations? And that's what I hope to reinforce with you here today. So the real opportunity is, of course, to move beyond compliance and into the people's minds and hearts. That's a quote from Stephen M.R. Covey in the book Speed of Trust. One of my favorite books. I use it in training often because the quicker we trust each other, the sooner we get results. So what he says is getting into people's minds and hearts. And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about culture. We're not only getting into the way they do things and the reason they do things, but the why behind what they do. So culture is nothing more than the sum total of behaviors of all the people in your organization. That's from a podcast I listened to called Manager Tools. I thought that was a very good definition of culture. And that's exactly what it is. This organization has a culture because of the human beings and the behaviors inside of it. And the great job they do to put on events like this is part of that culture. And it's a standard. They have a standard is the reason why they can do these successful events. This is our culture wheel. And I've asked for a couple of volunteers in the room to help me with this. So we got values, rules and procedures, leadership, recognition, ownership, self-verification, and communication. And I've got over to my left here, I've got Doug. Doug Gallione is with Shoots, and he's going to tell us a little bit why ownership is important to a safety culture. Do we have a hand mic available?
Do we need it?
You sound loud enough. Go ahead.
Why I think ownership is important is because people that truly take ownership work relentlessly to make certain that all aspects of their job, their organization, their project are adhered to, and they're infectious. I think people that engage in true ownership of what they're doing or what the project is infect those around them.
Absolutely. Ownership is huge to maintain. And it's going to be at the back of the room. I've got Clive at the back of the room if we can get the mic to him.
Yeah.
And Clive is going to tell us why communication is important to a robust safety culture.
Well, let's invert it the other way. Imagine trying not to have a safety culture without talking about it. Think about actually the project. Talk about the project, its safety critical functions, the areas that need to be addressed. But also communication isn't just verbal. Look at the actual safety policies, making sure that they're actually read. Look at how through social media, through the communication within your organization, on chat boards, What are you talking about? What's the inbred feeling? And if you don't have that culture of communication right at the center, you can't get simple basic messages of protecting the staff, protecting PPE, all the variables. It's central to it.
Awesome. And Clive and I, you'll pass the mic behind you, there's a gentleman there. Clive and I had a conversation yesterday. I am bilingual. I speak American English and I speak Southern English. So if I've defunct to, leaving off some words and sounds, that's going back to my Southern roots. But we had the conversation. I've worked on some jobs where I was working for English companies and they would give us tool listing that had words on there that I didn't know. So you got to be careful in our industry about jargon, things that people call things that you are not familiar with. And especially in safety, we need to communicate where it's easy to understand. So thank you for that, Clive. And then next we have Robert. And Robert is with Brewer Equipment Company. Robert, you were going to talk about recognition and a good safety culture.
Yes, Brian. Recognition. So a lot of times on sites, there's more of a culture of fear the safety. People who are coming around, stay away from it, or there's a near miss. That's a bad thing to record. Whereas recognition, kind of putting in a culture of like a good catch card, or finding ways to inspire, motivate all personnel to want to be inspired to call something out and then recognize it as a positive, so that safety isn't feared and hidden from, but it's something that the culture and the company better drives toward and wants, and all personnel seek it.
Absolutely. In fact, as I teach, we heard the speaker yesterday on generationals. As I speak on that subject in communication, a lot of our Gen X and our boomers, they think that the younger people want to be coddled, is the word I hear a lot. However, I tell them we want recognition too as Gen Xers and boomers. So recognition is a very important thing. And I say what gets recognized gets repeated. So if you recognize good behaviors, you're going to get those behaviors back. So that's really good. So I'll finish it up with these values. Does your company have a set of values, and do those values match your safety program? Rules and procedures. I've already said this. I'm not saying we eliminate procedures and rules. I'm saying that we reinforce those with a positive safety culture. And then leadership. Man, that is so important in today's world where someone is leading the organization, setting the mission and vision, and making people understand and buy into a good safety culture. And then self-verification. Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Am I doing in accordance with our policies and with our procedures of our safety program? So those are the safety cultures. I know there are a lot of other components to a safety culture, and you do too. So start to think about those things as we go through our presentation. Now I want to introduce you to my friend Keith Hagan. And I first met Keith, my father-in-law. The business I work with, they're still in business. I did retire from there at a early life. But they are a fifth generation fabrication and construction company. And Keith was a friend of the family. So the first time I met Keith, my father-in-law sent me to a client that was in a mining operation and said, hey, go see Keith. Possibly he'll give you some work to do out there on that construction site. So I met Keith. He and I hit it off because he likes to joke. I like to joke and cut up. And we just became friends almost immediately. Fast forward several years, he gets laid off at the mines and comes to work at Southeastern Construction as a project manager. I was the construction manager of field operations, so I had multiple projects. Keith had one project that he was working on, and we became real close working partners, where I was responsible for getting the job site, the labor and materials and equipment, and he was responsible for hitting the schedule and doing the things on site that had to be done. That job finished, and they were talking about laying Keith off, and I talked to Keith. I said, hey, Keith, our safety director is going to be retiring. If you would accept that role, I feel like you would excel in that role. You've done some things I see that are safety-based, and I like your commitment to safety. And Keith accepted that role. So Keith was our safety director for the rest of his career. He wound up retiring from Southeastern Construction. But I want to tell you another story that ties into this. On July the 14th, 2014, I had just submitted a proposal for a multi-million-dollar, multi-site, multi-year contract for a large utility. So it was one of my biggest proposals I'd ever put together, and I was extremely happy that we were able to put in our statistics all the good EMR, the incident rate, and the types of things that you really shine with when you put a proposal together. Y'all familiar with putting together good proposals that you feel good about? So that proposal was due at 1 p.m. It was an electronically submitted bid, and we submitted our bid around 12:30. I had been working on that proposal for several weeks. I wanted a break from the office, so I decided to go to a job site. It was a job site that was close to our house and office, so I went to that job site. I walk up on the construction trailer porch, and I get a phone call. It's one of my superintendents at a job site 45 minutes away, and as Jeremy calls me and I hear his voice, I hear a little quiver in his voice. He said, "Brian, are you sitting down?" I went, "Sitting down? What do you mean?" He's like, "Brian fell." I said, "Okay, is he all right?" And that's Brian, B-R-Y-A-N. Mine's B-R-I-A-N, so I don't want to confuse you with that. He said, "No, he's dead." And what do you say to that? I said, "Are you sure?" I don't think anybody tells you that someone's dead unless they're sure. But I didn't know what else to say. And I'm a person I told Jeremy, I said, "Hey, listen, Jeremy, I will head right your way. I'm going to come to the site. I'll be there as quick as I can get there." And the next call I had to make, the first thing I did as I'm a person of faith, I got down in that aggregate parking lot and said a prayer and asked God to help me with this. It was the biggest trial I'd faced in my life. And the next phone call I had to call was my friend Keith. But I didn't have to call Keith because he was my safety director. I had to call Keith because Brian was his son, his 31-year-old boy who had been working for us for about 4 years. I said, "Hey, Keith, are you sitting? Where are you?" "I'm at home." I thought, great. That means he's with his wife, Katie, and I get to tell him this. I said, "Are you sitting down?" Worked for Jeremy. I figured I'd ask the same question. He said, "Brian, what's going on?" I said, "Keith, they're telling me Brian fell." I can't say he died at that moment. That can't be my first words to him, same way Jeremy did me. He said, "Is he okay?" I said, "No, Keith, they're telling me he's dead." I said, "But I'm going to go to the job site. I'm going to take care of this, all right? I just wanted you to know before I head out. Come get me." I said, "Keith, are you sure you want to go to this job site and see your son in this state?" He said, "I can't not do it." So I left that job site, went to pick Keith up, and then we made a very awkward 45-minute drive to the other job site. And when we get there, it's a crime scene. It was my first experience to a fatality. We're not allowed in. So we sit with some of our team members. We sit with some of the client team members. What do you talk about? Everybody's in shock. A few minutes later, a big dually truck pulls in. I recognize the truck. It was one of our clients, and his role was safety with the owner company. And the guy doesn't even park. He parks his truck in the middle of the road. He jumps out, and he says, "Where's Keith?" I said, "He's inside, man. Charlie, he's inside." And Keith came to Charlie, and Charlie embraced him. And I felt like a heel in that moment. I was like, I didn't hug Keith. I wish and Keith broke, of course. And Charlie, I was like, man, that was the best thing in the moment. Since then, I've been with other tragedies, and I've learned if I don't know what to say and I don't know what to say, a hug is a very good thing. So we waited to see the situation. Keith wanted to see his son leaving in the van. horrible experience. We did that, and I asked someone, I said, hey, please take Keith home. And then we had to get our attorney involved, and so the attorney came to the job site, and when I called him, he said, hey, Brian, I'm at dinner. He said, but I need a pair of construction boots. Will you get me a pair of construction boots? So I sent someone to buy him a set of construction boots at Walmart. And when we cleaned up the job site, I decided I never wanted to forget this moment. So I kept this box, and when we cleaned up the job site, I kept the crime tape. Sheriff line, do not cross. Because I had no idea I'd ever be standing on a stage talking about this. In fact, Keith and I did this together for a few years for some utilities. But about 3 years after the incident, if you're familiar with the OSHA log, a fatality stays on there for 3 years, right? So for 3 years, we saw that number on our OSHA log. And when I realized it was going to disappear, because it was a horrible thing, but it was also a reminder, I said, hey, let's build a monument or a memorial for Brian. And that's what you see in that picture there. That's Keith standing beside the memorial for his son. And what we decided to do was make that part of our fall protection training. You got to go see Brian's memorial as part of fall protection training. Because in that memorial is Brian's harness. And when we did the investigation, Brian's harness was laying 30 feet from where he fell. 30 feet was his life-saving device. It's horrific. And when you go through the OSHA investigation, what they want to know is that you provided training, that you provided reinforcement, that you're making sure that you're enforcing your own rules, and that you have actually done some terminations for that activity. Like when people are not following this core rule, show us that you did something to keep that from happening again. So we got through that whole investigation. If you're not familiar with that, that takes about 6 months. And I get a letter in the mail from OSHA. This is it. They got a little recommendation here. I had to call the attorney and say, hey, I got a letter, but is this the end? Is this it? And this was it. And basically what this said is, when they did our interviews with our employees, some of our employees saw Brian without his harness, and they didn't say anything. We see things all the time that we either overlook or we, you know what, I'm too busy to deal with that. I'm telling you, I heard this before this incident happened, and it didn't mean as much to me as it does now. And I don't want it to happen to you or your organization, is why I'm up on this stage telling you this story. So the investigation showed that we had all those things in place. So what we determined were we were compliant. We checked all the boxes. But our culture was broke. If someone saw Brian without his harness, then our culture was broke. A few of our employees saw Brian headed up the stairs from lunch with a roll of torch hose on his shoulder. Brian was known for wearing his harness to the porta-john. When someone said that during the investigation, I thought back to a job site where I saw Brian coming out of a porta-john with his harness on and thought, that's odd. But he wore his harness faithfully. So what we think happened was he took that torch hose up to that work site and he decided to try to hook up the torch before he put his harness on. In that location, that grating was deteriorated to a state that it collapsed is what happened. We had identified that and said 100% fall protection required. Now, what we learned later after the reality sets in was fall protection wasn't really enough. Had he fell through that grating with a harness on, he still would have been injured severely. So we went to our scaffolding contractor and said, hey, when we go back to that work site, we want to have pick boards spanning across the beams that are good because of the deteriorated grating. So in that situation, scaffolding contractors provided the risk mitigation. So that's what we're talking about today is culture over compliance, and the need to understand the why behind these things. Fast forward a few years, Keith and I are at a regional meeting similar to this for a construction industry. And I have been to OSHA updates before. Has everybody seen this chart here? What this is OSHA by state and then by year, the fatalities that the construction industry has. I'm sitting beside Keith Hagan, Dad, at an event. And the OSHA inspector brings up this log that I had seen many times in my 20 years at that point in time in my career. But I did like some of you have done throughout some of these things. I played on my phone. I got distracted with other things because that had not happened to me yet. But then I look and I realize, oh, wow. If I look at 2014 in Florida, of the 228 fatalities, one of them belongs to us, and I'm sitting beside the father of that individual. Means a whole lot more now. It's not just numbers. In fact, it's 5,283 human beings in 2023 was the latest stats I got. That's 5,238 stories like the one I just told you. Somebody's son, somebody's husband, somebody's wife, somebody's child. Whatever that person is, they have family that have lost them and friends that have lost them in those numbers. And that's why we target zero in our industry, because we don't want to lose people and we don't want to have people injured severely. That's why we have to be focused on our safety culture. So how do you define cultural excellence? How does your company define it? Are you being intentional? Not just to check the boxes. If you're going to your job site and doing inspections and using a checklist, that's amazing. But remember, you're checking on human beings and you're checking on hazards that could impact human beings. That's the motivation. It's not to pencil whip the checklist and put it in a folder somewhere. Successful people choose safe behaviors early and manage those behaviors daily. What we learned was we weren't doing a great job with our observations at the time. So we adopted a cloud-based observation. I know now a lot of folks are using this technology. And what Dr. Chuck Pettinger told us is when the number of observations goes up, the number of injuries go down. Now, this is quality observations. This isn't that low-hanging fruit of hard hats, safety glasses, steel-toed shoes. How many times have we been told that? This is getting really into the meat of the matter and understanding the hazards that are associated with our work. You scaffold contractors are working from heights. It's very important that you're paying attention to these things. So we implemented the see something, say something. It's widespread across our industry. In fact, Keith used to call this R&D, rip off and duplicate, is what Keith called it, because he said you could take other people's stuff in safety, and everybody agreed to share things in safety, so he would rip off and duplicate those things. Speaking up, early intervention, accident prevention, risk mitigation, data for improvement, awareness, raising that awareness, shared responsibility, employee engagement, and cultural enhancement. One of the things that I learned to do when I was doing observations is I would ask about the person. I went to a job site once and I didn't recognize an individual, but I saw him standing on a piece of flat bar with a cutoff grinder, and his foot was the vise to hold the flat bar to cut. I stopped him and said, "Hey man, how's it going?" I said, "That's not very safe." I said, "Do we have vices on this job? I mean, we've spent thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars on tools." I kid you not, he pointed about 25 feet, 30 feet away. "Oh yeah, it's right over there." I said, "And you're deciding to do this instead of using that chain vise." I said, "What do you do for us?" He said, "I'm a welder." I said, "You know how important welders and every employee on this job site, we don't hire people because we don't need them at the job site, right? That's very inefficient." I said, "If you're getting treated for your toe being cut off, I've lost a welder, and now you're not able to make the same income you would be making if you were at this job site. This is important to both of us. So make it personal and show them your value or their value. Show what's in it for them. Not only what's in it for the organization or what's in it for the owner this job site, but what's in it for the individual? What are you doing to intentionally grow your culture? Many of you have taken time away from your jobs to be in an event like this where things are encouraged to do safety. This is one of the great ways to do that. What other things are you doing to intentionally grow your culture? So start with yourself, start early, start small, and start today. The greatest gap in life is the one between knowing and doing. So look at me, I'm a big guy. I know to eat less calories and exercise more, but I'm not doing that. So what are the results of that? Look at that. That's a daily habit of mine. This is not a beer belly, this is a burger belly. But if I want to do that, then I know what to do. I just have to take those actions and steps to do that. How many of you are familiar with the story of Dave Ramsey and the billionaire? Are you familiar with Dave Ramsey? Anybody knows who Dave Ramsey is, a financial guru? So Dave tells this story where he enjoys going to meet with successful people. He happens to be meeting with a billionaire. He usually asks them, hey, what is your favorite book? And he gets the book and adds it to his reading list because successful people have read the book. So he asks this billionaire, what's your favorite book? He's got his pen and paper ready, and the billionaire gets excited. Oh, I love this question. He said, you want to know what my favorite book is? And I actually have a copy of the book. Do y'all want to know what the book is? All right, let me get the book for you. This is the billionaire's favorite book, The Tortoise and the Hare. And he said, I read that book to my grandchildren every year, and every year I read that book, the tortoise always wins. Kind of slides to understand that slow, steady process that we're committing to. We're changing our behaviors on a daily basis. What are we doing to improve our safety culture? I like to say it's more like a crock pot than it is like a microwave, slow and steady. We want to make sure we're working on this daily and we're moving the needle. It's easier to move a needle than it is to move a mountain. So start working on this stuff and be conscious of it. Culture evolves collectively and gradually. It's a shared responsibility. We heard about the ownership. Each role is significant. Culture over compliance, rules and procedures alone will not keep us safe. So that's where we're going with this. We had those rules and procedures in place, and they met the criteria of OSHA, so we did not get a fine. But we still lost a human being, and that's when we had to do some self-reflection to understand it's not all about the rules and procedures. It's about people speaking up. It's about getting people engaged in the culture and making sure we're doing things safely and not taking risk. So today matters. We over-exaggerate yesterday. Man, all those things you've done in life that were amazing and you somewhat exaggerate them, I'm guilty too. We overestimate tomorrow. Oh, tomorrow I'm going to do this thing. And we underestimate today. You could do something right now. You could text one of your supervisors or one of your managers and give them an idea to do things better at a job site because you thought of it as you walked around one of these booths and you saw some of the amazing equipment that's available today, the innovations that we have now that we can use in the industry to make the job site safer. So what will you do to make the industry better? What will you do to make your company better? And then you as an individual where you're committed to this process. How many of you read Good to Great, the book Good to Great? All right, several of you have read that book. Great book, another book I encourage people to read. But this flywheel mentality is the build-up, and we've got these level 5 leadership where disciplined people, disciplined thought, and disciplined action leads to the breakthrough. And so first we're going to say who, then what. We're going to confront the brutal facts. That's what we had to do, is realize, okay, we had these policies and procedures in place, but they didn't work to save a human being. And then that hedgehog concept, that culture of discipline, and then the technology accelerators. How can we use these things? And what are we living in now? This world of AI? How can you use these AI tools to improve your safety culture? And guess what? Culture is culture. It's culture for the way you treat people. It's for safety. It's for quality. It's all these things embedded into how is our culture and what behaviors are we accepting in our culture. So success is peace of mind, which is a direct result of self-satisfaction in knowing you did your best to become the best that you are capable of becoming. That's a quote by John Wooden that I felt like, fits in that, hey, what are you capable of? What is your personal vision and your personal mission? I'm trying to help contractors improve communication, leadership, and culture. That's what my vision and my mission is today. And I got to go out and find folks that need those type of things done. So I'm going to take time now to read you a poem. And I have reached the age where I have to have cheaters to do this. So here's the poem. It says, I am your constant companion. I am your greatest helper or your heaviest burden. I will push you onward or drag you down to failure. I am at your command. Half of the tasks that you do, you might just as well turn them over to me, and I will do them quickly and correctly. I am easily managed. You must merely be firm with me. Show me exactly how you want something done. After a few lessons, I will do it automatically. I am the servant of all great people and the regret of failures as well. Those who are great, I have made great. Those who are failures, I have made failures. I am not a machine, but I will work with all its precision plus the intelligence of a person. Now you may run me for profit or you may run me for ruin. It makes no difference to me. Take me, train me, be firm with me, and I will lay the world at your feet. Be easy with me, and I will destroy you. I am called habit. That's another one of those anonymous poems. Whoever was anonymous, they wrote a lot of great stuff, didn't they? So I ask you in this room, typically after I get through doing this, I get a few people that come up and tell me their story. And sometimes it's as sad as the story that I told. Sometimes there's multiple people involved in a fatality incident or a really severe incident. So what's your story? I don't want you to have the story I have. I want you to tell your team members what you learned from me during this presentation and take it back to them and let them know how real and how risky our work really is, and the reason why we put mitigations in place, and the reason why we do daily safety briefings, and the reason why we're committed to this. Although the probability is very unlikely that when something like this happens, it's devastating. And it's huge, and you need to be aware of that, and you need to make your teams aware of how risky. We can be safe, and we can have no injuries or incidents as long as we're committed to it and our team members are committed to it. And that's what I'm encouraging you to do, is get everybody on board, make them understand the mission, make them understand the purpose of these rules and regulations, and just be part of a team that recognizes, hey, we do work in a hazardous industry, but we can put safety, technology, innovations in place that reduce these hazards and reduce these risks. So that is my presentation. I want to thank you. I also, culture over compliance is what you saw today. I also have a communication workshop called Listen Up. And then I have a program that's 360 Leadership, where I do assessments that are 360 feedback assessments. And we also offer one-on-one coaching with your emerging leaders. So this is what I do today. I love our industry. I love the construction industry. I tell everybody I cut my teeth on a W8 at 18, which is the size of an I-beam, if you don't know what that is. And I really enjoy it. So thank you for your time today. I appreciate it.